Hi, it's Robbin McMahon here. I'm the host of Parenting Our Future. And if you're listening to this podcast, I want to thank you so much for being here. I also want you to know that I am a former angry mom. I used to yell and rage and threaten and punish my kids because I wasn't getting the cooperation or the behavior that I felt I should be getting. And I struggled for many years not knowing how to change or knowing what to do differently. It wasn't until I found the world of peaceful parenting that I learned why my kids acted the way they did, and also why I was so angry and triggered. I was able to heal my anger and leave my triggers behind so that I could focus on being the calm and confident parent I always expected myself to be. I can tell you that feeling connected to your kids is the best feeling in the world. My two boys are teenagers now, and we have a strong relationship that is rooted in deep connection. And where there is connection, there's cooperation. Parenting is the most important job we do, but it's the hardest job we do. And we do it without understanding the fundamentals of the way our kids grow and develop. And we do it without knowing the way their brains work or what their behavior is actually really telling us. So it's no wonder it's so hard. And it's okay to ask for help. It's okay to say, this is harder than I thought it would be. And that's where I come in. I can help you and I can support you so that you can have the cooperation and enjoy being a parent. You can book a free call with me on my website, parentingforconnection.com. And if you want to download my free guide, How to Turn a No into Cooperation, go to triggerfreeparents.com. I really hope you enjoy the show. Thanks for listening. Hello, everybody. It's Robbin McMahon here. Welcome back to another episode of Parenting Our Future. Our future, our children are so lucky to have somebody like Hester in this world. She is my guest today, and I just love this woman, and I love the work that she's doing wholeheartedly. So let me tell you a little bit about her first, and then you get to hear her actually talk. So Hester is a podcast host and an advocate and coach for parents and allies of LGBTQIA plus adolescents and young adults. She believes that the coming out process is equal parts beautiful and messy. She works with her clients to let go of fear and feelings of isolation so that they can reconnect with themselves and their child in a meaningful, grounded way, as well as move through their coming out process with understanding and love. I love it so much. She's a writer and she's a mom of four. Two of her kiddos are LGBTQIA. And she is there to help educate us all and really help us navigate this coming out process for our children. And I just want to welcome you, Heather. Thank you for being here and thank you for your work.
Thank you for having me, Robbin. I'm so excited to be here and to chat with you and your audience and just share a little bit of what I do and why it's important. So thank you so much for
you're so welcome. And all of my life, I would say I've been, there's always been somebody gay in my life, to be really honest. And I know that I have always been accepting. My very best friend, and I've talked about this before, my very best friend in high school is now a trans male. I always knew my friend was gay, didn't necessarily know that he was trans. And I mean, it was an adjustment. And I always have considered myself really open, really accepting. And then I was surprised at my feelings and my reaction when, with his permission, I'm sharing the story that one of my boys is bi. And it came out of nowhere for me. And I was surprised at how I took it, to be honest. I mean, I was so good when he told me, and he just told me, which is great. Like he's like, well, I just like, maybe you can tell dad for me. Right. That's kind of how he was. And I'm like, yeah, okay. And, my husband and I have always talked about it. Like, no matter what, like we are there for our kids. It doesn't matter to me. And then I was like, oh, I did not see that coming. I just didn't see it coming. And so I I'm surprised. I'm a little disappointed in myself that it wasn't like, I mean, it's not like, I don't know. I'm having a hard time even articulating it. Obviously, like this is real for me. And I have no problem with it, like at all. I think it's fine. I'm just so surprised. Like my boys were always boys. They were, really, and I just like, as he's become a teenager, I do see a difference. And it's just a surprise to me. So there it is. I just barked it out for you.
I love it. No, I'm glad. Thank you for sharing that, because I think that your reaction is absolutely the more common reaction. It was my reaction, I think, even more so because I did come from a background where it was not accepted at all. And so not only was I shocked, like I remember my like very initial feeling was like, "Ooh, did not see that coming." And like immediately, like everything that I've been like programmed with, right, cannot be right. There's no way that any of that's right. But it was this whole like shift. And what I've come to, that was 5.5 years ago. So I've had a little time
Right.
to like,
Yeah.
um, but what I think this is such a common reaction if you don't see, even if you do see it coming, right? Because there are several things that just as parents, we are always worried about our kids in some way, right? So we're
Yeah.
always like kind of like, and one of the things that I think is really, really important, something that I learned right away within that first 6 months was it's okay to be like, it sounds like you were like kind of internally like, holy cow, I didn't see this coming.
Mm-hmm.
And but externally you were like, totally, I'm on board. Let's go. Let's do this. It's cool. I'm
100%.
on, right? So that's kind of how we were too. So I was internally like, oh, whoa, okay. Like tons of shifts need to happen. And there were a lot of, internal, biases that I needed to work through, and just things that I needed to shift and unlearn and then re-educate myself and all of these pieces. But one of the things that came out of that is that it's really important as parents that we allow ourselves time to grieve. And I call it like the grieving of the movie reel,
Mm-hmm.
because um, when our kids are born, like, it automatically starts like this movie reel, right? Of how we picture their lives to be, based on a number of factors, right? Like what they're interested in, how they're built. I mean, like a million different things go into this, and it's so subconscious. And because we currently live in a heteronormative society, the default is our kid is going to be straight, right? That's just like the automatic assumption. Unfortunately, that is what we are working to educate
True. It's
and
true.
change. But it's a true fact, it's a reality. So when this happens, I think probably most of the time it's not that you're like, my kid can't be gay or trans or whatever, right? It's more like, oh, okay, I've got to like change how I think,
Mm-hmm.
right? So it's taking that time, which is really, really important to be like, okay, this is how I envisioned things up to this point, and going into the future, right? That's not how it's going to be, and that's okay,
Mm-hmm.
because what is going to be is, equally if not more beautiful, because the truth is your kid has now shared something very personal and very, part of their authentic self. And if they are able to, from whatever point they're sharing this with you, then move and, forward in their life and grow in their life as their true authentic self, oh my
Mm-hmm.
gosh, like the
Mm-hmm.
outcome is just extraordinary. So
Mm-hmm. You
yeah, so
know,
cut yourself some slack for that,
yeah.
because it is a normal, natural reaction, and I don't should on yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. And you said should. You didn't. Yeah.
I
Just to
did.
be
I said
clear.
should.
Yeah.
I did not say
Because I could also do the other thing all over myself too, but I won't. And the thing is that it took me by surprise so much, but because I know people like you, and I've talked to other beautiful experts, and I've written about supporting your LGBTQ and trans child, well, not anyway, your trans child. I'm so awkward when I talk about it. I feel like I don't have all the right things or ways to say it, but anyway, I'm trying. And the first thing not the first thing, but I just said to him, like, I really was so surprised. And I just said, like, how do you know? And and I know that sounds like a really ignorant question, but this is a kid who really struggles with anxiety, had really stopped going to school for a while. So in other words, he didn't leave the house for a while, right? And I'm like, you're not even around anybody. And then we also know the influence of pornography as well can really mess up what we see, like, really can mess us up, our mind up, and can just make us question different things.
Right.
And I
Right.
do have, I have a client that her daughter was addicted to pornography unbeknownst to her for a while, and she thought she was gay. And then I thought, well, maybe it's this, what could it be? But I do see now, so I guess really ineloquently, what I'm trying to say is, oh my gosh, I'm having a hard time.
I love it. No.
Is like, I guess I was like, is this just a phase? Is this just some external influence, or is this really you? And I think that's where I was. And I also know from somebody else that I've spoken to, it's insistent, persistent, and consistent.
Yep.
And I
That's
just checked in
that's
with
what
him
I was
this
going to say.
morning.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just checked in with him this morning, and I'm like, hey, I'm talking to my friend Heather, and this is what she does. And I said, like, would it be okay? Like, are you still? And are you still? Just wanted to check in because we haven't talked about it, because he's like, I just want people to just know it. It doesn't, like, I don't want to make a big deal out of it. I don't want to be coming out about it. I just wish I could just let everybody, just know this is who I am. Right. And so he was totally
Right.
cool with it, but I did want to check in because we haven't talked about it for a while. There isn't anybody in his life. Right. School
Right.
just started back up again. So, yeah. Anyway, this is me just
It's
barfing out my reality.
no. Well, and that
So
the
good way.
reality is it's messy. Like it's never like this neat little package of how it works, right?
Oh
It's
my gosh.
always going to be messy. And I think we're like afraid of being messy. But that's why I
Yeah.
use that word so much, because there's not a better word to describe it. I mean, there probably are more eloquent words to describe it, but I just think, like, if you like come to terms and
Yeah.
really embrace that, like knowing
Yeah.
that it's going to be messy, it's going to be uncomfortable, you're going to say the wrong thing.
Yeah,
That's
and I'm
okay,
surprised that I am this
right?
way. Like, I honestly never in a million years would have thought that I'd be like, really?
Yeah.
I've surprised myself. And and I guess what I'm trying to say too, like you're saying, is you can't over prepare for something like this. You can't think your way through it just in case. And
Right.
if it really is a reality for you, it's going to go down for you differently for everybody, right?
It's
It's
different
different for
for
everybody.
every
Yeah.
single person.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
And I think so there are a couple things. Like, I love that you checked in with him, because that's such an important thing. And it's not so much that you were I it's more like, is it okay if I talk about this? Right. And I think they always appreciate, like, I know my kids, the same thing, like, where I'm always like, okay, I'm going to be doing this today, or I'm writing about this. Is it okay if I talk about this particular piece, or if I talk about, your coming out story, or whatever it is? Um, and so I think that's a great thing for just establishing a really lovely line of communication, because there's so many unsaid things in that, right?
Mhm.
Um, and then also, we did all of these same things. Are you sure? Yeah, we asked that question. Are you sure? So don't beat yourself up if you've asked that question. It happens. And I think partially it happens out of shock. It happens. I mean, like you just said, you can't, it's not something that you're going to be like, okay, I need to prepare just in case. The reason why, you do what you do and I do what I do is just to, like, it's kind of that whole like when we read when we were pregnant, what to expect when you're expecting. There's like a million things that could happen, right? So what to expect when you're raising kids, like of
Yeah.
right this age.
Yeah. Good
Well,
point.
just
Yeah.
right. And one of the things that I think is really important to realize is that when your child comes out to you, they have likely been thinking about it for a really long time. It's
Yeah.
not a like they just woke up that morning and were like, ah, I think I'm gay,
Such a
right?
good point. Hmm.
And so even though for us it's like, oh, this is brand new information, right? For them, like we know with Connor, he'd been thinking about it for 3 years by the time he told us,
Wow.
right?
Yeah.
Like that was something that in his head was just going round and round and round for 3 years, which so I don't think that's the norm, but I do know just in working with so many people and just the research out there, uh, this is what it is, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and look, the most important thing to me is that my kids grow up to be resilient and to, have good lives, to choose compassion over, you know, violence, all of the things. And so this to me, who you love isn't, the fact that you love is what I care about. Right. And so I don't, it's not about me. And I also, I embrace it. Like, that's exciting to me, like I can see the future where, if he's, bringing home a guy, like that's fine with me. I have no problem with that at all. And in fact, I think it might be kind of fun, right? So, I mean, you can't help but project yourself into the future.
Oh
And I
yeah.
also am really bringing myself into this moment here and saying, you know what, look, it is what it is until it is something different, right?
Right.
If it ever is, right? And because I think that a lot of us, you say, like, how do you know? And I think you also think, is this going to last? Is this just a phase? Like, are you sure? Right. And I know I mentioned that earlier. Right. And so I think for those parents that may be facing this and maybe wondering, is this just a phase? Because there is so much more about, you just scroll through social media and there's a lot about LGBTQIA plus. And you kind of wonder, is it outside influences or is it true? Right. Do you
Right.
know what I mean?
I do know what you mean. Absolutely. And that is a very I've actually worked with a couple of people recently that, were very concerned that that was the driving reason, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And certainly I think that um there is potentially an influence. What I think more is that it is so great for kids to see that the
Mhm.
representation. It's great for them to be able to see themselves in someone else and be like, oh, like the way I'm feeling on the inside, the way I'm thinking, the what I'm who I'm attracted to, there's somebody else that looks just like that or feels just like that, or so being able to identify and be
Yeah,
like, oh
huge.
wow, like having that representation is huge. So I think that is a much bigger piece, and
Mm,
that is why we're seeing kids come out, and perhaps even at younger ages, because they're like, oh, I'm not by myself. Like this isn't a
mhm.
singular thing. There's not something wrong with me. I'm not broken, right? There's like there's somebody else out there that looks like me. And
Yeah.
and too, like, and I've been a big proponent of literature and seeing representation in literature and really keeping those
Mm,
books around, and that's such a big thing right now too. And how important that is for a kid to be able to read a book and be like, oh my gosh. And I've talked to Connor about that, who he's 22 now, but like how would that have been when you were in middle school if you could have picked up a book and been like, oh, like this kid's gay too, and it's okay.
mm,
And
mm,
and so he's like, of course that would have been amazing. And I think the positive side of that is when there is more of this positive literature and positive things on
mhm,
social media, because we know there are also the flip side.
mhm,
It does keep them away from pornography and
mm,
the
mm,
negative, because there It keeps them away from the super dangerous apps that are so easily accessible and so easily to lie and say that you're a different age, right? I mean, that's a whole nother topic
Totally.
for another
Totally.
day. But I think that this is like a piece that people kind of miss where they're like, no, we don't want anything anywhere. Well, it's really actually good to have the really positive representation out there because we want that for our kids, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the important thing too is to know that it isn't about just seeing some feeds with LGBTQ people is not enough to make you or your child gay, right? Like
Correct.
to
Well,
be
it's
just
like,
really blunt, right?
exactly. I mean, think about it. Like if I were to watch one, is that going to make me gay? No,
No,
it's going to, what it's going to do potentially is make me more compassionate or have a deeper
right.
understanding of a topic that I don't understand very well yet, or, fill in the blank. So, you know,
Well, and I've always said to anybody, in the past, why would you choose that? That really is a more difficult route. And we have statistics, right? If you look at the Trevor Project, 45% of LGBTQ youth have seriously considered suicide in the past year. So half of those youth are thinking of killing themselves.
yeah,
So, we're talking about something that is killing our kids, and therefore we have to respond in the right way and respect them in the right way. And when I say in the right way, it is messy and imperfect, just like my
correct.
experiences, right? But having people like you to help us through this is what we need. And what is your podcast? Let's just make sure people
Oh,
know that you have a podcast dedicated to this, which I've been
I
on.
do. Yeah, I do. As a matter of fact, it's called Just Breathe, Parenting Your LGBTQ Teen. And it is, oh my gosh, I think that I have, over 70 episodes out there now. So there's plenty of content for, whatever you want to learn about, whatever you're curious about. And I think that's, such a lot of times we're afraid to ask questions out loud, which is one of the big reasons I created this, because it's you can listen to this in your AirPods and learn and get some understanding and then come up with more questions that want to know the answer to. So lots of stuff out there. Thank you for asking. Yes, that
Well,
is.
it's important that if you're listening to this, I haven't turned it off yet because I'm so awkward. Then you get to know all about Heather. And I mean, obviously all of your links and everything like that will be in the show notes. So please check out the show notes because they will be there. And the thing is, we owe it to our kids. Look, we have to affirm and accept who they are no matter what, right? And we say
We
affirming, meaning
do.
you're
Yes,
saying, yes, that is who you are, versus accepting, which means there's something wrong with you, but I'm going to accept it anyway. But
correct.
less than 1 in 3 transgender and non-binary youth found their home gender affirming as well, meaning their parents rejected them,
Correct.
right? And
Correct.
that is where we see these rates of suicide, right?
We
uh
do. We
it's
do.
so much more. I mean, it doubles for trans
It
youth.
does. Everything pretty, I mean, kind of across the board doubles for kids
Trans.
who are transgender. Um, One of the statistics that I do love though, and I know you have it right there, is the difference between what a difference being supportive and affirming can make. So a child
Yeah.
who comes out as LGBTQ in a home that is affirming, as opposed to a child who does not, I think it almost cuts that in half. Is that correct, Robbin? According to that, I can't remember off the top of my head, but
Yeah, it's so I'm looking at the Trevor Project right now, and it says
yes.
LGBTQ youth who live in a community that is accepting of LGBTQ people reported significantly lower rates of attempting suicide than those who do not.
Okay.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
doesn't give
So it
an
doesn't give
actual
a number,
percentage.
but it is significantly lower. So, and we just know that from just anecdotally. right? We know that. So,
And from a peaceful parenting perspective, right?
yeah,
From the way that I live and teach, this is about us not running our own agendas. Our kids will reject us, and we don't have a choice whether they're going to be doctors or lawyers or construction workers or whatever. All, like, we just have to accept it all. And if we keep running our own agenda, our kids will reject us.
yes,
And isn't the
absolutely.
point of raising a family not just about the first 18 years, but it's for the years to come, for decades, right? We
Right.
sometimes forget that we do want to have a relationship with our kids for the rest of our lives.
Right.
So that is so important, to know that our child has roots that are within their family, that are safe, that they can come to you at any time. That's the antidote for all of this, for,
Yes.
for a lot of this. I wouldn't say 100%. There's mental illness. And if you can't have access, or you don't have access to support for mental illness, that can create some things. And that's often layered on top of other
It
issues, right?
is. It is.
So like, you just don't have a choice. And so what are you going to do? Accept them or reject them? And rejecting them means they're gone.
They're gone.
And
They're gone. And that the damage that creates
Mhm.
is a lot of times irreparable, right?
Right. And
And
I've seen it in adults.
right. I mean, we have, because we're of that generation
Mhm.
where I think we definitely probably see more of that than we do the other. And I think that that's also why, you and I both have friends who came out much later in life
Mhm.
than, kids are coming out now. So yes, I think that there are a couple shifts, and you've mentioned them. The one is realizing that we're not here to say you're going to be a doctor, you're going to be a lawyer. We are here to recognize what their inherent strengths are, who they authentically are, and then help them, grow as that person, right? Like,
Yeah.
that's our job. Our job is to love them unconditionally. Our job is to make sure they are safe.
Yeah.
Our job is to affirm who they are. And those things are going to equal not just a relationship with them for the rest of our lives, but like a really cool relationship, like a deep,
Yes.
meaningful relationship, as opposed to, oh, I've got to go see my mom. Like,
Oh,
right?
I know so many adults that say that, like, yeah, I got to go see my parents, or I got to go see his parents, or whatever. Like, yeah.
Yes. And every time you hear that, aren't you like, I never want my kids to say that, right? Like, that is what we have the opportunity to cultivate now. And so I think, okay, here we have the tools available to us. And
Mhm.
it's going to be uncomfortable. It's going to be messy. You're going to mess up, but it is far better to mess up trying than it is
Mhm.
to like stay in this like rigid place where you're like, well, I'm so afraid of what's here, right? Be
Mhm.
messy.
Mhm.
It's okay.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I think that, you're talking about, we read the books, what to expect when you're expecting, and that sort of thing. And the very first thing on the very first page should be, you are not going to give birth to a mini me. You will not. In fact, this child will challenge you in ways you never expected, and make you face your issues, because there is no other relationship that's going to do that for you, right? That
Nope.
in that way, right? The
Correct.
way our kids show up is an invitation for us to heal ourselves and our issues, because what they're bringing up, and when that's a trigger and an issue for me, it means that I've got something in me that needs to be healed,
Yep.
right? And so, yeah,
Absolutely.
so that's what this is about. And they come through you, they do not belong to you. And if, being an LGBTQ person is who they authentically are, then that's what you got.
That's
So,
what you got.
and you
Embrace
may need
it.
some help, and you may need some help through it. And that's what you do as well, right?
And that's what I do as well. Absolutely.
And the reason is because if you don't, we will lose them either to suicide or because they've rejected us. So, like, I just want everyone to hear that,
yeah,
right? It's so important. And do you want a child who denies who they are because they are too afraid to tell you? Can you imagine living a lie all of your life because you don't want your parents to reject you? I mean, that is also a truth.
it is a very big truth, and it's a very powerful truth, to really consider what that means. And, for anybody who's had any kind of, developmental trauma, or any kind of, learning about how all of these things work and had to heal some things, right? You understand that bond, how strong that bond is, and how hard you work to keep that parent bond. And so, a child is more likely, if they think you will reject them, if they think that you will not love them anymore, they are more likely to just live a lie. That
Yeah.
is the choice they will make. And do we want that?
Mm.
No, of course we don't. In our heart of
No,
hearts, no, we do not.
exactly. In our heart of hearts, even if you say, yep, nope, not on my watch, in your heart of hearts, think about when you held your baby for the first time. You wanted the world for them. And if you need to go back there, go back there.
Yeah,
Remember that baby, that is still the little human who you have. This human is just breathing their own into their own life, right? So
yeah.
it, yeah. So, okay. So let's, what we've sort of danced around it. We've talked about my thing. Okay, here's what I want to know. A couple things.
Okay.
Can you, and maybe this is a little late in the program to ask you this, but can you define LGBTQIA plus? Let's just do
Oh,
that quickly because I think that is helpful. The
absolutely.
IA, I'm not sure.
The IA, well, it's very confusing for those who don't do this every day, right?
Right.
And who are not in the community. So it is totally okay to ask that. And I think it's you'll notice that my podcast is LGBTQ, and I
Yeah.
have since added IA plus, not to the podcast, but to my writings, because that is now kind of the updated
Mm.
way. And it's really just trying to be as inclusive as possible of all orientations and identities. So it stands for lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender.
I wrote it down, so I'm following along. Yeah, right? On my note. Yeah.
I know, right? Queer,
yeah,
intersex, asexual. And then plus stand out some people say Q is for questioning. I tend to go with queer.
Yeah,
That's just
traditionally meant queer.
Queer, exactly.
Which is how some people like to identify as, right?
Correct.
And I have some friends that don't say gay, lesbian. They're just like, yeah, I'm queer.
I'm queer. Yes. And I think that is very much of like our kids' generation for sure. And I've talked to my kids about this and how it is used, and it is one of those words that as a straight cisgender person, I cannot say it is not proper for me to use that word. Like describing somebody, unless they have, explicitly given you permission, you do not call somebody queer.
Yeah.
So that's kind of a distinction. As a total and complete aside, but I am going to plug this a little bit. I just wrote a 50-page ebook on how to use every single word, phrase, and thought within like all pronouns, words not to use, phrases to use, the whole 9 yards. I'm literally uploading it onto my site today. So it is going to be available for everyone who has, we all have questions on how to use all these words and what they mean. So the other interesting fact that I just love, and I think this is why intersex has been added, and that intersex people are there's beginning to be a lot more understanding around what intersex is. The statistic
Can you just
interestingly enough.
what is it?
Sure. So an intersex person is a person who, um, as simply as possible, is born with biologically both.
Oh, both. Oh, gotcha. Okay.
Right.
Okay.
So it can be, and sometimes one is more prominent than the other, but essentially at
Right.
birth, it's decided their gender, right?
Gotcha. Oh,
Instead
yes.
of embracing that they are an
Right.
intersex person. And the statistic, which I think is so fascinating, is that the number of people born intersex is statistically the same as the number of people born with naturally red hair.
Whoa.
I know.
My son is naturally red hair, not the one I've been talking about, but my other son. Anyway, that's so
See?
interesting.
So, yeah,
So
I mean,
more
not
than
that
you
people,
think. Think
so
of every
more than
redhead
you
you
think.
see. Yeah.
Exactly, exactly, because it's something that's not talked about, right? That's not, and there's not been a lot of understanding. And so I think there in recent years has been a lot more research, and people are talking to, to share and to understand, and, all of these pieces. So I
And I
do
can
believe
see
that's
a
why
lot
it's
of,
been,
sorry to interrupt you. I
no.
see a lot of shame
Yeah,
would come out of that, right? A lot of shame
correct.
and embarrassment, as a mom, and then the child. Yeah, that's a tough road. And to put it in the term that you just said, like, look, it's like having red hair. Whoa, that's and by the way, when my son was born with red hair, it really surprised us. So
Like, where did
now,
that come from?
yeah, and totally. My husband was like, "Yeah, where did it come from?"
Hmm.
Just wait 1 second. And then, okay, so then the A, is that the opposite of that?
No, actually, so intersex would be is gender related,
Okay,
biological gender.
okay.
Um, A is asexual, so that is or some people say agender, but I believe asexual. So asexual is orientation. So no attraction. No, so it's your attraction, like who you love, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like I can't remember what you said earlier, but it was so spot on.
Oh,
Um,
gender is who
oh,
you go to bed as, and your
orientation is who do you go to bed with? Yes.
yeah,
So this is
neither of which is anybody's business, by the way.
correct.
Just want to say, yeah,
Exactly.
yeah.
Really, it's
Anyway,
not. That's what
yeah,
we're working toward. But yes, so it is neither. So
neither.
asexual, yeah, so not a orientation of
And so, okay,
yeah.
okay, okay, okay.
So there
Thank
we
you
have it.
for explaining that. Okay,
Uh,
so let's say you have a child that you think might be gay. I'm going to ask you two questions.
Okay.
You have a child that you think might be gay. What should you do? And second question is, if your child comes to you and says they are gay, and I'm using gay as the blanket term, right? It could
Sure.
be right, because not all trans are gay.
Correct.
Yeah. Okay. So let's just say gay and insert whatever. What do you do in either case? You think your child might be gay, and your child tells you that you're gay. How should you respond
To
to
either
that?
of those, to
Yeah.
both of those. Okay. So if you think that your child might be gay, or any other beautiful orientation or identity,
Mhm.
you can A, begin to educate yourself.
Mm,
So you are better prepared. But B, you need to let them come to you.
mm,
As much as you might want to be like, I know you are, just tell me, right? Um, you've got to let them come to you. That's really, really important for communication, for trust, um, for a lot of different pieces. And I know that's kind of hard, but I mean, those are things you can do to kind of occupy your time while you kind of wait. And you can certainly like provide ample opportunity for them to come to you, to let them know that you are a safe space, that your home is a safe space.
mm.
But asking them flat out is not something that I recommend.
Okay.
Uh, so that is the
Because they
first.
just might not be ready,
They might not
because
be
you might
ready.
embarrass them. It might be
Correct.
coming out of nowhere for them.
Right. Well,
Not-
exactly. I mean, they may still be, and because there are, I mean, this is a whole nother piece, but there are stages of coming out. And
yeah,
by
I
the
bet.
time that your child comes out to you, they're already halfway through those stages. There are 6 stages. And so your child needs to go through those stages at their own pace. And really, so if you kind of catch them and they're still all the way back here, they're going to be like, whoa, what? I mean, there could be a variety of reactions and, depending on their age as well.
Okay.
So
Okay.
developmentally where they are. Um, when your child comes out to you, the number one most important thing that you can do is love them unconditionally.
Hmm.
I mean, really, there's no like magic words to say, or
Hmm.
as long as they know that they are loved truly unconditionally, which is not I love you, but, right? Not I love you, even though, right? It is I love you, period. All of you, every piece of you, inside and out,
Hmm.
period. And that is really, I mean, it sounds simple. It's a lot harder to do.
Hmm.
Um,
Surprisingly harder. Yeah.
it
And then you
is,
go
but
educate yourself.
and then you go educate. Well, I mean, I have a whole list of like the 10 things that are really, really important, but that is my top number one because it is so vitally important. Because if you do not do that, nothing else matters, right? So that is really, really important. And then, we talked about this earlier, providing a safe space for them. Like these are our like just base level, jobs is providing a safe home for them, someplace where they know that they can come
Yeah.
and just be themselves and be messy.
Without
And
judgment, without criticism, without lecturing and punishments, like
without
just
shame.
let's just what do you need from me? How can I support you?
Yep,
Right?
that's exactly it.
When my son told me, I just said, okay, thank you for telling me. Thank you for telling me.
Perfect thing to say.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing this with me. Oh
Yeah.
my gosh, what an honor that is, right? I mean, think about it. For your kid to share that with you, that is huge, huge,
Yeah.
huge,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, and I felt so honored to be able to have that moment with him, like in truth, like
Yeah,
to see my boy come to me and be vulnerable in that way and say, like, this is my truth. And
right.
that he came to me, he didn't come to my husband, which I understand, because he knows I'm squishy and lovey and like, all that kind of stuff, right?
Right.
I love
Right
love,
on. Yep.
as
Uh-huh.
you know, and so like to give that to him, it makes me want to cry right now
I
because
know.
it's just really beautiful to have that moment and to sort of like it was only the two of us that existed in that moment,
Oh yeah.
and that was really beautiful. And like that's what we want, that's just anyway. Yeah, it's pretty special. And I know, you and I come from, and I'm going to age us maybe, and I don't know how old you are, but we come from the era of the Ellen first kiss. We come from the era of AIDS, you
Yes.
know so there are fears there that we that are sort of innate in us, that maybe are subconscious too, right? So that's why that education piece is so important.
Well,
Yeah.
it is. Yeah.
Okay, well, I didn't think you were going to make me cry, but you made me. Well, you didn't make me do anything. Nobody can make you do anything. What am I saying?
That's
I'm
right.
blaming you for
Well,
nothing.
this
um
is, it is, we're talking about our kids, and that's
and that's my soft spot. Like that is
right.
just, they're my favorite people, even when they are driving me crazy,
Oh,
even when they are challenging me, even when my 17-year-old says, "No, you can't tell me what to do anymore. I'm 17." I'm
yeah.
like,
I know. You're like,
let's talk about that. I'm not asking
yeah.
you to do much. Let me just
Uh-huh.
say this. But anyway,
Oh
so
my gosh.
look, at the end of the day, we want to love our kids, give them that safe place. And again, having people like you who have blazed a trail for us, who are just catching up, is so helpful. And I just want to say again, thank you for what you're doing. The world is truly a better place because you're in it. And I say that like with my full heart. And I want to also thank you for what you have for our listeners, which is a list of resources and a list of what to say when your child comes out to you. And those resources that you're going to include, it just helps for us to know more. And if this is foreign to you, do yourself a favor and get educated so that you can honor who your child really is. And that is so important. It's so important. If those statistics we shared aren't enough, I don't know what else to say.
Right. It's real.
It's real.
Right. It's real. And even if your child isn't or doesn't ever come out, it is great to just be educated and to understand, because if your child isn't, they likely have a friend who is.
Good point.
So, and just kind of learning how to not only, kind of give your child the resources to be a good ally, but for yourself to be a good ally is so vitally important. So,
yeah, so true. So true. Right. It's about modeling it as well.
It is.
Yeah. Modeling it for tolerance, for acceptance as a worldwide community.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
I love that. Well, that's a beautiful way to end this episode on. Thank you for being here again, Hester, you are wonderful. And again, I really appreciated you listening to me and my story, and thank you for your support too. It's helpful. We all need support.
We do.
So
all of us do. And that's why, you're so wonderful. And I always look forward to when we chat, because it is just, we all need each other, and that's really important. So thank you for what you're doing and kind of giving this platform for all of us. This is really, really important stuff. So.
Yeah, it is really important. Absolutely. Thank you so much, Heather. And by the way, I don't want to brag, but both of us are on Podcast Magazine's list of top moms in podcasting.
Yes, we are.
So I'm lucky number 13. I think you're like number 7 on the list. Number 6. I know. So you beat me out, but that's it's all good.
We're both on there. That's all that matters. And I was so excited. I was like, look at us.
It's great. Love it. All right, Heather, you can see how awesome she is, clearly. So, and your podcast will not disappoint. Absolutely not. And like I said, I've been on it. So there you go.
Yes, you have. Look for Robbin's episode. Yes.
I'll put a link in the show notes. How about that? Okay, let's do that. All right.
Perfect.
Thanks everybody for listening. Have a great day. Bye for now. Thank you for listening to this edition of my podcast, Parenting Our Future. I'm parent coach Robbin McMahon, and if you're enjoying this podcast, please share it with someone who you think might also need to hear this message. And don't forget to subscribe, and if you like my work, I would be grateful if you gave me a 5-star rating. For those of you who like my content and want more, visit me at yellingcurebook.com to get your copy of my book and to find other resources to help you. Until next time, I am wishing you and your family peace and connection.